way. People are nowadays just looking at the positive, the pretty, what is good for me in a marriage or a relationship, but they don't see what requires from me when things get ugly. What are the sacrifices that I have to do? What's the work that I have to put on? Because people are, just looking at the beautiful that people post on social media, on TV, the fairy tale thing, they think it's everything up, 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 but it's ups and downs. And it requires a lot of work from both parties. It requires sacrifices from both. It requires forgiveness and understanding from both. So I think it's just people is the reason why it's not working or it's so hard to come by is that people concentrate on what's good, what I can get, and not what I can give.
All right, like that. Go ahead, Marcus.
I want to touch back on what he said because I think that's kind of the answer to this whole thing, right? Um, I think it's the foundation, right? It's really hard to build something great on a poor foundation. And in the beginning of these relationships, it's a lot of things that people let slide for whatever reason. It could be you attracted and you still want to have sex with her, or he was spending the money that you wanted for the things you wanted. We let these small things slide that we really should be looking at and addressing. It might not be something to leave somebody for, but it's definitely something to have a conversation with. And in order to not rock the boat and keep things consistent within the relationship, but we having fun and having sex, you let stuff that is gonna be a problem for you in the long term go. And by doing that, we train people how to treat us, right? So you essentially train this person that this behavior is fine and that they can continue with this. And when you come to them and say this is a problem in the future, now this person is going to look at you like it wasn't a problem back then. Why is it a problem now? And what happens with women sometimes, they'll start to pull other issues out of that. And now they're looking and searching for things that could be the reason as to why you're addressing this with them now. And that can create a snowball effect and it can spiral and spiral and spiral. But if you go back to the foundation of how you create these relationships, the things that you are unhappy with, you got to address. I'm not saying you got to curse somebody out. I'm not saying you got to yell at them. You got to address them in a manner where the person can hear where you're coming from, what you mean, why you're saying that, and why it's not conducive to a positive working relationship. And when you do that, you can solve those things. And that's one more layer of the foundation that you're building upon. But if you try and just skip over something that's a major thing and put stilts on it and then build off of there, it's doomed to crash. And I think it's a lot of stilts on these relationships when things should have been addressed early on.
Can I ask you a question, Mark?
Yeah.
So you think people may get their feelings too involved in relationships to the point where it kind of keep them from reaching the big picture? I mean, I see a lot of times men go in relationships with the big picture in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Lifestyle, family, protection, stuff like that. Trying to get to that level. And a lot of women are going in it. Someone would say an individualistic mentality, my emotions, overall. And that could, maybe cause people to try to, or become incompatible. Do you think that it's safe to say that?
That their emotions is the things that tear them apart and bring them in different directions?
Basically, people getting their feelings too involved in a relationship, too involved. I mean, I'm not saying you can't get your feelings in it, but your individual feelings. Maybe suppressing the end goal, the big picture of, what's more important. Me personally, I was raised up to believe that the family was more important than your individualistic goals and aspirations. And I think those things, once you get in a relationship, those goals and aspirations still tend to be severely prevalent to the point where they become priority no matter what, even if they're attached to another person.
So okay. I agree with the point that people get too involved with their emotions early on, right? But I think it manifests in a different way. What I think happens is what I was speaking on earlier about ignoring things. You get so involved with the person that out of the fear of losing them, you will let the stuff go that you should have addressed. You know what I'm saying? And if you like, even if say you like, for example, when you was talking about a goal, long-term working or something, right? if you know you have to allocate a certain amount of time to doing something that's going to pull you away from the relationship, if you clearly communicate that with the person and they are not understanding of that, that's going to be an issue in the long term when you're trying to achieve those goals. And if you like the person too much, you won't step away from them when you should. I think liking someone removes the ability to remove yourself from the situation if you see the signs that it's there that you need to remove yourself from it.
Can I
I get it.
interject something? I think a lot of times when we talk about these situations, we talk about only one micro sector of women. The woman who goes into it all for herself, the individualistic woman. When reality shows women are very male centered, very ego centered around male validation. Even down to, have you ever seen a woman trying to be rejected by a man? Like, and some of y'all have had that experience, I'm sure. The way that women correlate their hierarchy into a man's life, the whole who comes first, his mother, his wife, his daughter, his baby mama, right? Men are not having that conversation about who comes first, me or her daddy. That's never a thing. When we are having this conversation, I don't think we actually acknowledge the women who have a huge codependency on their male spouse. So what I believe happens is after the ring, there's a sense of entitlement that kicks in after the ring. After the ring, there's a sense of ego that inflates for her. After he sat down and he's made sacrifices for her to get to where she wants to go. After, she sat there and overextended herself, giving and giving and giving, but never acknowledging what his actual needs are, which is why we always default back to cheating as if it's the only issue in a relationship, which is not. And we only talk about it as if men are the only ones who do it. What I see typically happens, women show up with their representative and we put it on throughout the duration of the relationship until we get the ring. After we've gotten the ring, it's no longer exciting for her anymore because we just made it to the final level. That's when the real work starts, right? Because now you can't go anywhere. Whereas men, you're like, okay, well, this is the new chapter for me. This is the real start. This is when I get out the game and everything actually fine tunes up. Where you go from, being a player to where you're now the coach, and where she has to switch sides and get in the game and actually run the ball. It's a very different dynamic for us. Most times, women are, as much as we say we don't like to compete, we are competing hella hard before that ring. We're absolutely competing. We're nail, head, and tail competing, trying to get his validation from his mother, trying to get his validation from, if he has a baby mama, and from whatever woman that previously just had his heart, and for the next woman that will have his attention. It's always us constantly competing. And when she gets into the relationship and she finally gets the ring, then she don't want to work no more. I think women experience a sense of burnout because it's not all guns and roses anymore.